Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, good morning, good evening, everyone. So today we are reviewing chapter 5. So we have, how many of us now? 7 plus 1, 8. 8 of us. Okay, that's cool. So I thought we were going to start with Subbu, but looks like Subbu is coming next week. He sent me a message saying that he was not able to make it. So let's start off. So why don't we give the only lady in the group here the first choice to start off?
I agree, Rajesh. That's a big choice that you gave me.
No, otherwise, I'll be accused of discrimination and all that, in this country. So
Okay. I could go, but I want to kind of give a word of caution that I'm still at a very, very 101. Let me also put up a small slide that I had. Let me. Can I share? I can, right?
Yes, you can share.
Can you see this? What do you see? See the slide or a slideshow?
We can see the now slide. We can see the slide. I think when you do slide share, it just goes wonky.
I know. I thought I could. Just
leave the slide and make the slide bigger. That's all. The zoom the slide in.
Okay. Let me do that. Is this okay?
No, we cannot see a slide. We can see only that Gita chapter 5 Karma Yoga Sannyasa, my takeaways. That's all we can see.
Yep. Now you see.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's fine.
No, I was spending, I will say thanks, Rajesh, for kind of making us pause and say, let's see what we have understood from the chapter. So I did spend some time. I'm still at a very 101 stage, I think. There are a lot of things that we could have taken away. I could have taken away, but there are things that stuck to me are more to do with what I can do on a day-to-day basis. So the first one, again, that got nailed much further than what probably we have seen in the Karma Yoga is, yes, we kept saying inaction is not an option. I think it goes one step further and says that, yes, you do not have, action is much superior than renunciation. The reason why I feel this was an important takeaway for me is many a time when we go through these conversations, you feel there is at most clarity. Yes, we've debated every single topic that comes up. For every topic, there are like 20 different perspectives that we have here. And but by the time I kind of get out of this room and start to kind of get into this world lab, I don't think things go the way that we have discussed. Every situation is different, and you feel as if the clarity is gone, or maybe it's not as easy as what we have said in the conversations to implement. So the thought that used to come to my mind is, no, I think I understood the concept, but I am in a wrong place. Or when these interactions happen, the thoughts that keep coming is, whether have I understood it, or probably the ecosystem is not helping me implement. But I think there's a bigger message there. The ecosystem is right, the thought is right, the sadhana that you need to go through is you have to go through this. So just giving up on what we are doing is not an option. It's a kind of a profound mandate given by Bhagavad, kind of nailing it down further in me, saying, yes, it is not an option. Go through this journey. There is this self-development that you have, whether it is desired or for the benefit of others, and finally go through some kind of a very silencing of your mind and so on. So that's really great clarity with a bit of a with certain kind of finality said by the God, right? Yes, there are not too many options of giving up. You kind of have to go through this. And that happened in multiple cases, whether it's work or personal aspects. The second one, again, I don't want to beat the things that we've already discussed much in detail here again, but again, it's a summary. I think everything that can be traced back to whether it is a desire or fear or anger, every emotion that we go through can be traced back to these three. A simple cue to check yourself in every situation. I felt, you desire versus expectation. If you just drop that, maybe certain differences and so on, which we discussed, everything arises because of desire or an expectation. And about for a person, for a thing, for an outcome, that's the root. And then there is always this fear of what we losing what we have, whether again it's a career, personal life, or a fear of not happening, not the desired thing happening. Right. So the fear and anger is in between. So anything that comes in between these two seems to be really manifesting. And I kept checking myself on multiple occasions. You just ask multiple whys. It's almost like that RCA. You ask 5 whys, then you get to the root of the problem. There's almost, you can trace it back to one other thing. Either you felt something was about to happen, an expectation, or you felt your kid may not, may go into a different direction, and the fear of not being able to bring them up the way that you want to. Everything can be traced back to these three emotions. So I felt that was a great takeaway for me to keep asking myself those questions when in the moment. And once you have that, I think there is obviously some clarity. One, an opportunity to pause, and second, you also know why it is causing them. Third is renouncing of the agency. I think we discussed this once before, but again, slightly more clarity here. Only when we overlay a relationship to a thing or a person or an outcome, I think that's exactly where a lot of disturbance and so-called agitations are happening in the mind. I'll give you a very simple example, and I smiled to myself when I realized it the other day. I was it was a very hectic day. I was watering plants outside, and a neighbor comes and says hi, and there was a very pleasant smile on my face and said hi. How are you doing, etc. The next thing is I saw Anand passing by. He was taking the car and going out. And my feelings were is that I'm sitting here taking care of all of these things, and he's going out to gym. He's happily taking care of things, but probably he could have helped, given me a helping hand. The thought came, and the next thing was a smile on my face. I didn't have that expectation from the neighbor. I had an expectation from Anand. And so I think it kind of goes back to every single transaction again, whether it happens to when you see a kid hungry, or when you see a kid fall down, the reaction that we have when it is our kid versus probably somebody else. There is obviously an initial reaction, but the way we react when we superimpose a relationship, an outcome in workplace or anything like that. So just giving up the fact that it is not me, or the detachment, what they call it as an intelligent detachment, the word that was used here in the book, and we discussed multiple times. I think those will again help us catch the way we are doing things. And of course, each one of them has an impact on how we are accumulating our karma, our journey, our evolution as a person and a soul. So these are my very simple takeaways I felt were, very, very important for me to assimilate and do the sadhana. So they are not very deep, they're not very spiritual, probably, there are many things that have been said in this chapter, but these are very practically useful ones for me and for my personal growth. And I wanted to thank you all for, helping me go through one more chapter of Gita in this discussion.
Wonderful. Awesome. So I don't know how we want to do this. Do we want to have any clarificatory questions to the presenter, or we hold off all the questions because we are a very short group? So here's what I would suggest. Maybe, we'll take 2 minutes. If there are any clarifications that you want to ask of Shyamala, let's ask. And then we can go to the next presenter. And that's going to be Lakshmi.
Hey, Shamala, this is really great. I just had a quick comment. I think you're being very humble, and definitely some of the questions you've raised in the last, definitely a lot of questions you've raised in some of the discussions have given really good insights. I definitely put myself in the same shoes as you are in. So we're all learning together.
Thanks, Raj. That's very encouraging. And I feel I have a lot of questions because when I ask those questions, I feel I don't have clarity. That's why I'm asking questions. When I see answers, then I feel all of you have much more clarity than what I have. So, but it's a group learning. And I think at least I'm comfortable raising those questions, not keeping them inside me. And some of them could be a little bit of too detailed, and I want to catch myself and say analysis paralysis, stop there and start to accept rather than too much of questioning and challenging, and but very, very, very insightful discussions, last few discussions. Thanks for encouraging, Raj.
To turn that around, Shamla, and say that I think I have a lot of answers, but when you ask a lot of questions, I think I realize I don't have all the, I don't have most of the answers. So it's actually very useful the way you kind of raise questions, and then it opens up a bigger debate. Thanks for that.
And very nicely presented too. It captures the essence really well of the chapter. I really like the key takeaway aspect of it. Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shamala. Appreciate it so much. Lakshmi, would you like to go next?
Hey, I don't mean to chicken off, but I didn't attend the last few sessions. Sorry.
Okay, no issues. So who wants to go next after Shamla now? We default to Ajay, looks like it.
Sorry?
We default to you.
Oh, okay, excellent. So I have to say I am somewhat underprepared. I missed the last session and I haven't had time to reflect too much. I just spent the last 30 minutes just reading through my notes. So what I'm going to say is just looking at my notes and just reflecting on chapter 5. And as I've said before, I think a good theoretical sort of sense of 5, and it's the practical side that I've been struggling with. And I'm hoping that as we go forward from chapter 6 onwards, I'll kind of feel a lot more comfortable with the concepts of chapter 5. But again, having said that, I mean, I found a number of profound sort of thoughts that came out looking at chapter 5, and I'm going to relate some of them in no particular order. But the first one was just a definition of karma yoga or a karma yogi. And there were 3 things which I picked up. One was that a karma yogi is united in consciousness with God. A very sort of motherhood statement, but kind of very simplistic in the way it's kind of set up. So that's the first definition that I kind of liked. The second one was in Shloka 7, where it talks about a noble soul having 3 virtues. And I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong, but it talks about Vishuddha Atma, which is pure intellect. It talks about Vijat Atma, which has conquered the mind. So this whole debate between mind and intellect. So it's conquered the intellect, conquered the mind. And the third one was Jitendriya, which is controlling the senses. Again, sort of kind of resonates from a practical aspect. The first one being united in consciousness with God, fairly high level. But these 3 kind of words in the shloka kind of are very practical, that it's really about sort of working on the intellect, your mind, and your senses. And then it concludes very nicely with this phrase, which I found very interesting. It says, Sarva Bhuta Atma Bhutatma. And there's a repetition of this Bhutatma, which really means one who sees the soul of all souls in every living being. So being able to connect with others and their challenges and their miseries is fundamental to being a karma yogi. So it's not sort of rejoicing in somebody else's problems, or worrying about all the negative traits around jealousy and all the other sort of 6 of them. So I mean, to me, this kind of shloka 7 was very helpful, both from a theoretical as well as a practical perspective. The second one is around something which I picked up in 11, where it effectively says that the only permanent thing that we carry is the purity of heart. All the material possessions that we get in this lifetime are left behind. But it's important to understand that the purity of our heart is not in God's control, it's controlled by our karmas, right? And to the point that that Shamla made, when we talk about nirvana, renunciation, it's about letting go of that sense of doership or a sense of agency. And that is the fundamental reason, objective of what we need to do as we kind of progress in our lives. So the bottom line is that karma is the only truth. And again, I'm echoing what Shamla had said. And there's a good example of, Rama could have won the war by himself, but he chose to involve a whole lot of people and do karma and purify themselves as part of that whole Ramayana sort of story, if you will, right? So just the centrality of karma in the process of evolution is something which I think becomes kind of very core to what we do. The third one is something which, again, reading 23, and that's something which sort of resonated with me. And, it's something which I don't know whether it will kind of, you'll, as you reflect on it, just think about it. But there's a lot of, we all have desires, right? And we do a lot of things because we worry about, or let me put it differently, we control our desires a lot out of a sense of shame, right? And what I mean by that is that, we do a lot of things because we don't want to be embarrassed, or we have a fear, or there is an apprehension. And if you think about it, just take a simple example of getting up in the morning. I take this example very often. Even if, let's say, the intellect and the mind connect and we say, I need to get up in the morning, right? Why do I do it? I do it because I'm fearful that I might get overweight. I might be embarrassed that what are other people going to say. But if you get to the core of it and say, I'm going to do this, not because of embarrassment, fear, or apprehension, but because of discrimination, to know this is the right thing to do, right? And so the right thing to do is that I should take care of my body because I have duties to perform to my society, to my family, to whoever else. And so you're doing that action based on knowledge as opposed to a fear, embarrassment, or a apprehension, right? And I have to say that there is a lot that I do on that basis of a fear of censure, right? And I thought that was something which really kind of was an aha moment to me, and say, I need to do things not because I need to kind of, look good or, get brownie points, because I need to do something because it is the right thing to do. So that to me was really, really sort of a big takeaway from this reading. And then the last one is just a simple point. I looked at 17 and I thought 17 captured the whole essence of Shravana, Manana, Nidhyasana, and Jnana perfectly. So it uses 4 words in the first sentence of the shloka, which is Tad Buddhaya. It talks about Tad Atma, Tad Nishtaha, and it also talks about Tad Paranaya. Sorry, my pronunciations are all wrong. But if you look at it in the reverse order, it really means the last one is Shravana, which is, you strive to, you've got this urge to achieve your goal or the ultimate sort of truth. In the second one, which is Tadnishtha, you kind of do manana to establish a faith in the ultimate sort of Atma. In Tadatma, you're basically kind of aligning the mind and intellect, which is the process of Nididhyasana. And then Tad Buddha is essentially getting to that witness attitude that Shamla again mentioned. So in a way, sort of this first line of the shloka read in reverse, and based on my understanding, is really that process of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, and then ultimately getting to that state where you are the witness consciousness. So I thought that was a really wonderful shloka. Yeah, those are like my takeaways from chapter 5. Thanks, everyone.
Clarification questions for Ajay?
Thank you, Ajay.
Well articulated, Ajay. Thank you so much. And was it just 30 minutes of preparation for that?
No, these are notes that I've written down over the last few weeks. So I just read through them and sort of said, okay, what is it that I want to talk about?
Okay.
So
no, I was just wondering if it is 30 minutes preparation, then I think that's really truly amazing.
Ajay, I think the comment on censure is again a good one, actually, good insight. Normally, that's a good insight. Thank you for that. Good. Actually, like both of yours. Thank you.
Thanks.
Shamla's and Ajay's, yeah.
All right. Ashish Bhai.
Okay, I can go. I'm not prepared at all. So I'll just speaking without preparation. I'll go through what I understood, which is probably not much. So I'll start from chapter 4, kind of a summary of what had happened there. And so there, Bhagwan talked about action and inaction, and inaction, and then and that everything is Brahman, like what is being done, how it is being done, who the doer is. So everything is Brahman. And then he gets into the 12 kind of yagnas and how they have to be performed, and what is the significance of the guru and what we should look in the guru. And in a way, there was an emphasis on Jnana Yoga. That it is really great, and but in the last shloka it was mentioned that Arjun, you do your karma, you do karma yoga, and that's where it was left. And chapter 5 starts with obviously Arjun had a doubt that in Jnana Yoga was told kind of to be of much more significance than all the other yogas, but I am being asked to do Karma Yoga. So he starts with obviously the question that comes up. He has a doubt that please tell me what is good for me. And then Bhagwan starts that for anyone which is in a situation or disposition like Arjun, Karma Yoga is what is proposed. And I think all of us, most of us here are in that situation. In our lives here, we have to do things. So we cannot go and sit in a cave and start meditating. So what was proposed for Arjuna is applicable to all of us. So there is a mention of the word Shreyas there, like what is Shreyas, and which means what is appropriate for me and what will bring me peace and what I'm looking for. So in chapter 5, Karma Yoga is proposed, and kind of Bhagwan says that whatever we do in life, whether we are taking an action or we are not doing anything, whether it is pravritti or nivritti, whether we are moving forward or moving backward. And a funny example is like people marry to be happy in life. And when people take divorce, it is also to be happy in life. So all of us are looking for happiness, but what is that happiness? And none of us know what it is, but actually we are searching for our true self. So wherever we are, I think that search is on, whether consciously or unconsciously. So the first step in that process is obviously that wherever most of us are and where Arjun was, we are driven by achieving things in the external world. So we have to start with that, because if we sit at our homes or in a cave, we will still be thinking about so many things to be done in the outside world. So Karma Yoga needs to be done, and because that kind of exhausts our vasanas, and that kind of gets our bodies physically active, and so in a way we are taking care of the tamoguna that we have. And the next stage is moving to selfless action, and that is actually the Karma Yoga, and that is helping us in purification of our minds, which is essential for the next stage, which is a single pointed focus. So when we start doing action with a in a selfless manner, we are in a way getting more focused, and with that single pointed focus, we are getting ready for the further things that are to be achieved in this journey. So yeah, and when we are doing action, yeah, the next step is it has to be done without a sense of doership. So there shouldn't be a kartritva abhiman, and also there shouldn't be a karma sakti, like everything has to be done the way I want to do it. So in a way, in chapter 5, Bhagwan is proposing that for the situation in which Arjun is, like he's in the battlefield, and as per his duty, he's supposed to fight in war. So he should go ahead and do it with full enthusiasm. And I think that's the message for all of us also. Wherever we are, I think first thing we have to do is do action. And I think that's my understanding of chapter 5.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashish. Any questions for Ashish?
Ajay is on mute.
Sorry, thanks, Ashish. I really liked what you said about marriage or divorce were seeking happiness. I think it nicely captures the futility of looking for it in this material world. That was nicely put.
Thank you.
Yet another one just related to the same thing is, when we're buying a house, let's say there's a house that you really, really like, and you connect your happiness to that, and finally you get that house from somebody else, right? And somebody's selling it. So you're happy finally when you get the house. The seller is happy when they sell the house. So can the house be the object of happiness? Can a source of happiness? It cannot be, because one is getting rid of it, one is acquiring it. They're both happy at the end of it, or seemingly for a brief amount of time happy from it. So.
All right, that's
Yeah,
cool.
Ashish, I also like that marriage divorce example. The question I had is, what if you're prepared? That's pretty awesome, man. You said you're unprepared. It's so good. I mean, I'm just wondering what you do if you're prepared. So it's really good.
Thanks. No, I missed a lot of sessions also last
You can
month.
go next week also.
Yeah, you can go next week too. We'll get more time.
Exactly. We'll like to hear your prepared version too. So.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Really
We'll
nice.
go
Thank you.
next. We'll go next. Chitra, if you're settled down, would you like to go next? You have to unmute yourself. Looks like I have to do.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what Ashish said because I just joined. So I don't know if I'm going to repeat things, but
No, repetition is good because this is a revision of the same chapter 5. No other chapters we are revising here.
okay. So I kind of put together what I understood from this chapter. I think that's what helps me the best. What I understood was you have two kinds of karma yoga. One is karma sannyasa yoga, or renunciation of action. That means you have no desire for the results of your action. And the other one is karma yoga, which is work which you perform with a devotion, right? So I kind of liked, I think 5.5 it was, which said that both of these are not mutually exclusive, right? So both are, kind of identical in the sense like if you do one, the other will happen. And so we don't have to look at them as separate things, which personally, I like that part the best. Because sometimes, it's easier to do the renunciation of actions, and sometimes it's easier to do with devotion. So it depends from, what the karma or what that particular action is. I thought that was a very nice thing that I took back from this first part of this. Then, of course, what the next part of it is talking about is how when you do this, it leads to purification of mind, which is what we're all looking, into, because without purification of mind, you will not be able to sit and sit for meditation. I think that's the last part that he talks about, how to meditate. But not just that, also without purification of mind, you will not be able to let go of all your desires, which is what we are trying to do here, is have no desires, which then, have this whole pathway. And then, you have, what is it, 7-step or something, ending up in anger and stuff. And if you do this, and if you finally acquire self-knowledge, I think I like that part also, is that does not mean you stop doing actions, you still do actions, but the joy is not through the action, but the joy is in the self-knowledge, which is different from us, where we're always, our joy is, oh, I did something and I'm so happy, or I went to this place. Even something as simple as I want to go to this place because I had a lot of peace of mind. That means it's the action that is giving me the peace of mind, and not the knowledge, which should be with me wherever I am. It does not matter. So I thought that was a very interesting thing. Of course, waiting to reach that place soon. So we don't have to go anywhere. So yeah, I think that was the last thing that I felt I wanted to talk about is joy is derived from self-knowledge and not through actions and senses. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chitra. Next is Mukku. You said you'll do it next week. So, Kishore.
I had a question for Chitra.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So when you say it's joy from self-knowledge, right? So it's just can I elaborate a little bit? Is it the knowledge itself or about the self? Just I was trying to how do you kind of
So my assumption, at least what I have understood by self-knowledge, is then you don't have this I am separate and the supreme is separate. Basically, you feel you are them and they are you. I think at that point, then the joy is because everything then it's like you're watching wonderful drama, and you don't feel the happiness is watching the drama because you are not involved in it yourself. So that is my understanding of self-knowledge is basically knowing that you are not, because right now all said and done, even when we are saying, aham brahmasmi or whatever, you don't feel it, right? You're just saying it and you're hoping that this auto suggestion will finally lead you to that place. So there is definitely this duality that definitely exists, at least in my sense. I feel like whenever I'm having this conversation of why this or why did this happen, what do I learn from this? It's always this, there is this duality, right? I am asking this question to someone and someone responding kind. But I think that will vanish if you don't have this duality. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming it will vanish.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, I for sure agree. Right, we all respond from duality by default, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you. That's
articulated. Thank you, Chitra. Thank you. And I liked the way that you connected in terms of how the joy from knowledge comes in, and especially I can't repeat the words what you said, but you basically said the same concept, that is, you see action in actionlessness and actionlessness in action. That is very nice. All right. Any other questions for Chitra? Over to you, Kishore.
Right. Thank you. Again, I'm going to bring it a little bit, but just sharing some thoughts. So first, I would like to zoom out a little bit. So let me share my screen, something that I've shared before, but just so we have the higher context of chapter 5 in the scheme of things, right? So I hope I'm sharing the right screen. Am I sharing okay, yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to zoom out and show this because, where does the teachings where do these teachings fit in, right? What is the overarching goal? Obviously self-realization, but in the intermediate goals, so we are climbing Everest. We are trying to see where we are in the climb, and so it is useful to kind of know where a lot of these things kind of fit in. So so if you look at why, it obviously chapter 2 told us, for instance, that the ultimate source of happiness is within us, right? This is being explained in various ways, but we don't feel that way, right? That's exactly the point that was made by Chitra before this. We don't feel that way, even though that truth is mentioned. We intellectually kind of understand it, but why don't we feel that way then, right? So it is good to see why, to understand why does that not happen. Because in, finally, our mind is covered with these three thick layers, and depending on our vasanas, our journey so far, if you will, across all these millions of births, if you will, we came up with we have a different constitution of these three layers in one way or the other. Some of us may have more impurities. We all have impurities. Some may have certain impurities that are more than others. The constitution may be different. And in a way, chapter 5 is transitioning us over from, we spoke about karma yoga as being the one that helps us purify the mind, and it's taking us closer to meditation, which actually helps us with the mental wandering or the turbulence in the mind. So finally, it's preparing us, as we can see here, right? And we also saw in Tattva-bodha, it's the same thing, that there are some prerequisites before we can actually start to assimilate self-knowledge and going from intellectual understanding to absorption of that knowledge and living that knowledge. So these are steps along the way to get to that point. And we can kind of see the transitioning happening, going from, if I switch a couple of slides here, sorry about that. I just wanted to show this. Basically, that karma yoga, impurities are solved or helped. Impurities are removed by karma yoga. Mental wandering is through upasana yoga, which is where we are dhyana and meditation would come in. We're getting there, and then finally through Jnana yoga we get rid of that ignorance. But to prepare for Jnana yoga, our mind should be at a point where it's relatively pure, at the same time calm, without again going back to the example we have taken before, which is that of a lake that is both impure because of sediments mixed in the water, as well as a lot of disturbance on the surface of the lake. We have done quite a bit through karma yoga to help move the sediments down, settle the sediments down to the bottom, and purify the water. We are getting to a point where we want to reduce the waves on the surface, and when that is also done, the source can shine through by itself, right? So that's, to me, is the higher level. If I were to zoom out a little bit, that's kind of the overall context. And in that context, specific to chapter 5, again, a lot of the concepts, I think, Ajay, you raised this point in one of the classes. A lot of the concepts seem to be the same thing. Yes, it is. I felt the same. They are the same thing. If in fact, in 23, Bhagavan talks about desire and anger. He picks the two from the Arshad Vargas. Out of the 6, he picks 2 of them. But we have also seen the desire and anger play out in chapter 2 when we spoke about the slippery slope of attachment leading to desire, leading to eventually to anger and delusion. And we've seen that whole path kind of play out. So it is a repetition of that in some ways. In terms of how do we get over this, in terms of how do we purify our mind, yes, karma yoga has been prescribed to go from selfish actions, even if it is selfish actions, to just get us out of inactivity, into some form of activity. And that is best done if the motivation is about, hey, I am going to get certain things, so hence I need to do these actions. It gets us out of tamasic behavior into rajasic behavior, and then from there to a higher level of rajasic actions, which would be around selfless actions, and to prepare ourselves more, go towards the path of meditation, towards a higher level of contemplation, right? So again, to me, a lot of these things are about our mind, about attaining equipoise in the mind. And again, if you go back to, in fact, Tattva Bodha, where it talks about Vairagyam, and that's kind of where that's being spoken here, even though that specific word probably has not been used in this chapter. Desire and anger, in fact, it talks about desire being the root cause, but then how does the desire go away? We are not suppressing it. We are not suppressing desires, but it needs to just fall off very organically, very normally. So one way is through discrimination, right? So again, going back to our Tattva Bodha teachings, so that Vairagyam can develop through discrimination. Because as an example, for instance, if you have a strong desire for something, if the intellect pitches in and says that, exactly, we just spoke about the house here. I mean, if there is a very, very strong desire that I just need to absolutely get this house, only then I'm going to be happy. And I've been there myself, and we've all been there one way or the other. Replace house with something else, relationship, place, thing, whatever. And Chitra, as you pointed out, how can we be happy here and now rather than when I get something, right? So one of the path that's mentioned is basically that Vairagyam develops dispassion, intelligent dispassion, as Shyama put it in her slides. That develops, but how does that develop, right? How do we have organically develop that thing? I mean, it has to come from within. It cannot be based on suppression of desires. So how does that happen? To me, that happens through discrimination. And what does that mean? It is through the understanding that constant reinforcement of the fact that, hey, even why am I desiring that? Again, going back to the why am I desiring that? Okay, I'm trying to be happy. But then I know that happiness cannot be the source of happiness. So having that mental discussion that, hey, you know what, the house cannot be the source of happiness because the seller is happy, the buyer is also happy. How can the house be the source of happiness? The same thing applied to a relationship. Yeah, I'm happy when my son or daughter behaves in a certain way. Or, again, asking those exact same questions and debating that internally in the mind through discrimination, eventually the answer comes through that, hey, you know what, at best it can give me temporary happiness, at best. But then we're seeking a higher grade of happiness, something that lasts longer. Then the source of happiness cannot be outside myself. And eventually, when that type of knowledge dawns, or we are convinced that it cannot be outside, Vairagyam has developed and it will continue to develop, right? And when Vairagyam has developed, then obviously we don't have that very strong binding desire for anything. And hence we are, going back to 23, Shloka 23, it's talking about desire and anger. Bhagavan is talking about desire and anger, which eventually puts us on a different path. So once we are beyond that, because Vairagyam has developed and desires have gone down or been eliminated, or the strong binding has been eliminated, that puts us on a path to a much calmer mind that's more in equipoise, right? And this again is a prerequisite to be able to meditate. So in some ways, these are all coming together. And if you look at it from a different angle, the mind is becoming, as the impurities start to go down and the waves start to slow down on the surface, the mind is already sattvic, but that is able to shine. The sattva is able to shine forth even more, and it's ready at this point to meditate, because otherwise it's almost impossible to meditate when the mind is agitated, and the basic cause of that would be desire, right? So I'll stop here, but I just wanted to share some of these thoughts no, not because again, chapter 5 seems to be that amalgamation of a lot of things that we've already seen, but and it's like a transition point in some ways to the next phase. So I just wanted to point out, just zoom out and see where we are in this climb to Mount Everest. So
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kishore. Any questions for Kishore?
Yeah, thanks, Kishore. That I loved that slide on the disturbance, the way
They flash it once, please.
articulated. Yeah,
Once
that's pretty
again.
cool. That makes me wonder: is there a relationship between impurity and the turbulence? I'm just reflecting this based on the way that slide laid out.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. So if you think of impurities, right? Let's take desire itself. If there is a strong binding desire, that is going to continuously run in your mind, right? Finally, it's about these thoughts that are constantly going through in the mind. And we are usually unaware that these are going on, right? And if you even take a moment to actually be the observer of these thoughts while these are going on, we realize how futile, how more often than not wasteful these thoughts are, right? So to me, that the mental disturbance that happens, driven by the impurities, right? So I feel a specific answer to that is, I think the answer is yes. But it's like this combination, if you will, right? And to me, the crux of the matter is that, right? In fact, Yoga Sutras say the same thing. It says Chitta Vritti Nirodha, right? Which is, how do I stop this mental activity, more often than not useless mental activity. If you look at it in a different way, when this happens, when there's a lot of prana that goes into actually driving this mental activity, if you think about it, right? So if you look, this is yet another perspective. So all this prana, this energy that's just literally getting wasted. But you need all that to be able to climb Everest, if you will, in this case. So by reducing that, you get that prana back. So and to use it, in fact, in various ways for a higher pursuit, and we need that, right? So no matter how we look at it, or yet another way, if you look at other books that are popular, if you look at Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, he talks about being here and now, right? Now, what does that mean? When you're, I'm sorry, I'm taking a little bit more time. I hope that's okay. Just sharing some thoughts as they're randomly, we're just connecting things here. But Power of Now, I've read it multiple times. It's on my bedside. I mean, I just go back to it every now and then. And there are some really strong insights there. There is no doubt. So when we are here and now, it means that we are not engaged with the thoughts. That's what it means. Those thoughts have died down. So you are right here at this moment. It says the same thing. Again, Chitta Vritti Nirodha, it's the same thing, right? Spoken in a different way from a different perspective of being in the now. So, so to understand that, to be able to view our own mind as things are happening, I think that's a key skill that we can develop, that we can bring in our daily lives. That will help us in this journey, because there are a couple of things. One is we understand our mind better. We kind of know when, I think Shamla, you mentioned this, when there was a certain amount of anger that was about to kick in, but then you caught it, you were able to deal with it accordingly. So it's going to help us, because that eventually, if you had reacted to it, that would have led to even more agitation later. And then it's just going to take us on a path to a lot more agitation. So if there are ways in which we can reduce the agitation, then that much easier it is to keep our mind in that stable, calm place, right? So all of these things are going to go a long way to, they're all so connected and connected to this one thing, which is how do we keep our mind calm, still, and in equanimity.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, and I think that's a good comment. Connecting to Shyamala's example. So then, in this framework, I'm just thinking out loud, right, just for me to kind of, in this framework, then, in a Shyamala card, that kind of emotion, right? Is that then pointing to what is impurity, right? If I were to reflect, I want to take it one more level, right? You're catching the symptom. So is the impurity trying to water plants into the long day? What drives that behavior? I'm just thinking out, right? I mean, that's a choice somebody made, right? That we could be resting also at the same time, right? If I've had a long day, when I could, rest for half hour and then do something. That's one path I could have taken. But deciding to water the plants that time, something drove that behavior. Is that in this framework, the impurity?
I think the impurity is anger there, right? I mean, the underlying was an expectation.
Okay.
And I expect, and then if you see that expectation, I think it was more of a the expectation coming from a relationship.
Correct. Which is attachment.
Somebody on the road, like I said, it was very silly, stupid, and very easy example to understand. I was standing.
Understood.
A neighbor, my reaction was different versus somebody where I had an expectation they'll help.
Correct.
But it's both. There are two different people who are happily going around with their daily routine, and I'm going on doing my work routine. But my reaction to somebody was different from the other person.
Understand. Yeah. No, that is a great example, actually. A lot of times I'm on the receiving end, so I completely get it. No, that's why I'm trying to, like, my suggestion to my wife is always, why do you do things, right? When you're in a long day, right? And then, rather my thing is I'll rest, then when I want to do it, I do it, right? Which generally is sometimes can be never, right? So that's a challenge. But I understand that. That was my question: is what kind of drives that, right? But that is a great example. Very, very, very powerful one, actually. Thank you for that. Thank you, Kishore.
I think
Usha and Preeti, Mukku's wife and my wife, whenever they get together, they know that Mukku and I will never end up doing anything around.
But just what I know there are a couple of hands raised. Sorry, one more point, right? I mean, Swamiji mentions this in the book. So, as Vairagyam kicks in, I know that's the unspoken word in this chapter, but behind the scenes, I think that's what it is. One may question. It's like, hey, wait a minute. If this is putting me on a path where I don't feel quote unquote happy when I, as I relate with places, people, things, then am I becoming like a robot? I mean, like completely, on the other side, am I just losing all happiness? Like, will I not gain any happiness at all? Then what is the point of life is something that these type of thoughts might come in. Actually, my kids ask me that. Then what do you want to do? What makes you happy? Why this is in fact just 2-3 days ago my son was asking me, it's like, what do you really want to do? Where is it? If I were to give you something, what is it that will make you really happy? And I just laughed it off, but I think that those kind of questions might come in. It's like but the truth is then that it's a higher grade of happiness, which is different from the ones related to external sources. Because why a higher grade? Because it's coming from inside you and it lasts longer or can be permanent, right? So that's why it's higher grade, and it's independent, I would say. So
if you can finish the thought, there are two questions Chitra and Shyamala have for you. let's finish that and then we will,
Yeah.
Chitra.
Yeah. I've started with one question, but maybe I'll see if I can. So, Kishore, you were talking about calmness, right? So one way is, of course, through a constant dialogue, right? And constant dialogue with what is giving me happiness, and from there coming to the here and now, and being present, or basically reducing the chatter in your mind. So I have a question. Sometimes when there's a real, you're worrying about something. I mean, something like maybe your child is really sick, and you've gone to 2 to 3 hospitals, nothing is happening. You don't know what to do. You're really, I mean, the worry is so much. And then after some time, your brain gets tired of the worry. And then all thoughts stop.
Okay.
Now, my question is it similar to when you're actually going through or not? And if not, why is it not similar if it's different?
Interesting. Very interesting question.
And because I just recently saw this happen. And then my question was, is it any different from the other way that you do?
It's interesting. I don't know if that happened because they accepted it. Could it be? I don't know. I'm just wondering. As in, they looked at it. They went around different hospitals, doctors, and whatnot. And at some point, mentally, they accepted. And could that have happened because of that? I'm not sure.
I think it was more a case of, it's like this case of Draupadi, right? First, she tried everything, when she was being disrobed, trying to appeal to the people around, to the king, her husbands, everyone. And then when nothing else worked, she said, I give up, and Krishna, this is it, I give up. So maybe it's that level, right? Like when you have everything. So it's like, I give up. I don't have a solution. I give up and I rest.
Yeah. To me, that is acceptance and surrender in some ways. That things are beyond me at this point, and it's you've reached that point. I mean,
things.
Yeah. Sorry.
There could be two things. Sorry, Kishore, I interrupted you.
Please, yeah.
There could be two things, Chitra. One is at that point of time, the person can give up, and because there's some, lethargy set into the mind to not being able to think about any options, or some sort of a tamasic guna has got into the person, and the person says, okay, I think I'm going to just sleep it off now. That could be one option. The second option is what you rightly said. When the person is able to identify, saying that, okay, I've done everything what I can do now. Okay. And then I know that there's somebody else higher up who's able to help me out now. And at that point of time, the person renounces the agency of action at that point of time. Okay. Then help will come there for that person. Till such time, the person holds on to that agency of action, saying that, okay, I'm going to sleep it off tomorrow. I'm going to try something else tomorrow again. That the person is still holding on, saying that I am responsible for doing this. Nothing wrong with it, because you have to do a self-effort. But there is going to be a point of time when the person will realize, the self-effort needs to get complemented with something much beyond that. And that's the point of time when Draupadi gives up, saying that I don't think anybody can help me beyond this. At that point of time, only Krishna comes. Till that time, Krishna does not come.
Yeah, so that's my question is, at that point, has the mental chatter actually stopped? That you're able to think clearly, or is it?
No, the mental chatter can stop for multiple reasons. It can stop because the person's mind has become so dull at that point of time that it's very good to sleeping. It happens most of the time. You think of a problem, you break your brain for a long time, and then you get so tired that you just want to sleep or take a drink. Right? Honestly, that's the reality of it.
No, Rajesh, you bring up a good point. See, finally, if you think about it, we struggle because we don't understand this, but this mental agitation is what is the disturbance, is something we want to get rid of, right? We don't connect it back to the mind, and the mind being in that kind of a state, and an agitated state, and it's an unnatural state for the mind. We have taken it out of the stable, centered state, and that is a disturbed state, and it's trying to come back. We are struggling to bring it back, but we don't know how. In general, one way is to take to alcohol or something else like that, thinking that it will help me with that. Obviously, it doesn't. But then we don't realize that, right? But then, what is the thing? Then what we are seeking there is the calmness of the mind, right? Get the mind back to the centered state, which is where it should be, right? For any system, for that matter, that stability is where everything tries to come back into the stable state. And so this is its stable state. But then what is taking it out of there? If you see what is it taking it out, and then apply discrimination to see, okay, I'm just getting pulled into this desire because of these reasons. Then understand that, hey, those things will not give me what is needed, right? The happiness that I see, because it's only going to be temporary. And so by applying discrimination, we can reduce the pull, if you will, on either sides, right? Or we are trying to get rid of something. That can happen too. In fact, Buddha's statement is around the same thing. Again, we saw, speaking about other texts, of desires and aversions being a root cause. Again, mind getting pulled in different directions, leaving it in a very unstable state, agitated state.
From you.
I also wanted to just comment on what Kishore, you were asking, what would give me joy? Your son was, I think, asking you this question.
What's the answer?
I think when you get to that state, then everything will give you joy, right? Because you will actually enjoy. We don't enjoy this life because we feel we are going through the pain and the, both sides of the coin. But then when you're out of it, then everything is a joy, right? Even the sadness is the joy and the happiness is the joy. Everything becomes, because it's a beautiful story that's unfolding.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, you go through different situations. You are in very tough situations. You can look at it as your, oh boy, I'm in so much thing, and everyone else seems to have a wonderful life and so on. Or you can look at these things as opportunities for growth, in fact, right? Each of these situations that is presented to us, tough situation especially, is an opportunity. So when we look at it that way, we transcend it, right? That situation is no longer binding us towards, again, going back to the mind. I mean, if we look at the mind, if we are able to observe your mind, we can see what's happening there and what is it that's causing that agitation. Again, by connecting it to the next level would be breath, because mind is connected to the breath. So by observing the breath, we know that the mind is agitated. And then by observing the mind, we know what is causing that agitation. So there is a connection, right? And this can happen on a daily basis, moment by moment basis.
Shyamala, your question.
Yeah, the first question is to you, Rajesh. When you said, and the great example by Chitra, when you said the mind chatter can pause either because you're exhausted or because you're about to renounce that sense of agency. I've done whatever else that I could. And if help doesn't come through even then, is that when we say that's how it's meant to be? Because you seem to be saying with certainty that if you renounce that agency, help will certainly come. But what if it doesn't come? Is that when we accept that this is what God wanted it to be?
No, the question is, what is the expectation of the time frame that you're expecting the help to come?
No, obviously now, right? I mean, at that point in time when that was happening,
so that means
right?
Agency still.
True. That yes, I have tried in the last probably 3 to 6 months, or it could be 3 to 6 days, whatever the time frame was. I have exhausted my options. So I am actually mentally, physically tired. I'm not able to take any next step. That's one way of looking at it. And so, no, I have done what I could. So, somebody else needs to intervene now. And if nothing happens, or something different, it either goes southward or nothing happens, is that when we say that's how it meant to be? How do you reconcile?
No, I think a great question. I think the way that I would see it is, you'll have to say, yeah, yes, now I'm going to expect that help to come from Bhagavan, because this entire thing is, I know that this entire thing is a drama done by him. I'm a cog in the wheel. My expectation is that, yeah, I'm doing my part, and at some point of time I'm not able to do it. Okay, I move on and wait for Bhagavan to show me the direction. So, for example, think about it. Okay, people give us multiple comments at some point of time, which could change the entire trajectory of how we're thinking about a particular problem. The very fact that a chance encounter with somebody can trigger off a conversation for you to solve a particular problem. How does that happen? It is Bhagavan acting through somebody else to us to help that thing out. But what happens is, this is where I also struggle. What happens is that when we give up, when we say, okay, now Bhagavan should help me, then I still have that expectation saying that by this time frame, you should help me. But the point is, that is what I need to drop. Because then you're saying that, I know better than him. Saying that, de time mein mere ko chahiye. Nahi ho sakta hai, bhai.
And also you want Bhagwan to help you the way you want the help.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's a good point, right? The way at least I think through that is, I think there's the two ways, faith and trust, right? The key difference, as I understand, is faith is you still, even though you're giving the agency, but still the identity and an expected desired outcome is still there. Right? That's, to me, is faith, right? God is going to help me is faith. But I think as if you can introspect, at least I see the trust is the deeper emotion. Trust is, everything is auspicious, right? The agency, there's no agency. There's no even a shade of the identity that I am this person expecting this outcome is there, right? So trust goes to a deeper level, and then trust is you're beautiful as this, just kind of settling into that idea, and then what happens. Whether the health becomes worse if somebody is not well, right? That is also is beautiful. If it heals, that is also is beautiful. I think that's kind of where the direction fingers point to that type of a deepening.
You said it much better than what I was thinking. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, to me, I think that's where the faith and the trust, start dropping to trust zone. When you're in those parts, and things go southward, then how do you deal with it? So great actually insight. Yeah.
So another quick one, Kishore, when you showed that slide of impurities, disturbances, and then ignorance, right? The question was more in terms of the direction. Is it linear or is it circular? I remember there was another statement made by Mukku, I think last time, where, or I may be wrong of how I'm remembering that. Understand, do, and then you know. So that's a cycle. There is knowledge, you continue to do, and then you realize. And so in this slide, is the desire for something, isn't it arising from the fact that you're ignorant about something? I'm ignorant that I'm full, and so I want this. I'm desiring this person. I'm desiring this thing. I'm desiring this outcome. So to that extent, is it linear? Just clarity. I think maybe representation can always be improved, but
right.
Is it linear or is it more dependent and circular? How do you guys see that?
I see. So here, the ignorance stands for that ignorance that I'm not this mind and body, right? And the self. So ignorance of the self is the one that's mentioned here. But your question is, hey, is this ignorance leading to desire? Yes, absolutely, right? Because if that ignorance wasn't there, then those desires and those vasanas wouldn't be there. In the sense that those impurities would have reduced and settled down dramatically. So but then there is the other aspect of it. To remove the ignorance, knowledge has to come in, and that knowledge has to be assimilated and absorbed to be owned by you, and to get there, a relatively pure mind is required.
Yeah, so that's exactly where I'm saying maybe it's more circular.
Yeah,
It's radial.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's linear, so I just thought.
Interesting. No, thank you.
Radial, right? You start off with ignorance. Ignorance creates all these desires. Each of the desires create multiple activities for you. And over a period of time, the mind becomes so muddled that the impurities are settled down. So now you got to devolve it back, reduce the impurities, reduce the wandering mind, bring it down to eliminate ignorance.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we've got 9 more minutes. Who wants to go next? Alpana, Vidya. We are giving all the ladies the first choice.
Rajesh decided to do this today.
So that the men can take notes.
Next week it's easier. You can just say all covered last week, done. Alpana, do you want to go next?
Rajesh, I can't. I'm actually
Okay.
just dialing in to listen. And,
Yeah. Vidya?
Rajesh, I can't. I have not done chapter 5. I was just.
Cool. No problem. Okay, Guns.
I missed a
one of you.
lot of classes, sessions.
Yeah.
But glad to join back again.
Fantastic.
I'll let Goods go ahead. I'll do it next week.
Okay, go Guns.
I was taking good notes.
I hope you'll do a good summary of the summary then next week for us.
Yeah, Guns, you don't have an option now.
Yeah, Guns, go.
I don't have an option. I was furiously taking notes and preparing my slide while you all were talking. Actually, I kept going back and forth with this and all the beautiful insights that were coming out. So let me share my screen and see if I can go through this quickly. Share.
So while you're doing that, I think what we will do is we will probably stop after Guns today, and I think even if it takes a couple of minutes extra, we'll stretch it and then close it after Guns, and we'll continue the rest of us next week.
Yeah. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your desktop.
Okay. So let me go to slideshow first. So this was fairly easy. So what all I did here was, oops, sorry. Let me just go here. Can you see my slideshow?
We can see your slideshow. It's blank, the bridge chapter.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Okay. So this was, I just did one thing. If you all remember, we did one summary of what we had learned in January of 2021. So I took the same thing and I just kept adding to it while I was listening to you all, like I just said. So this is just that one slide. And what I added here was, we looked at a graph at that time. So the value of what we were learning versus time. So this was January of 21. So I put myself somewhere over here. At least I'm happy that I still I'm still staying on the blue curve, still able to participate in most of our discussions. So really want to thank you all for that. So that's pretty much that. What I got out of this chapter was, that's why I was calling it the bridge chapter, because Swamiji also says this is kind of the bridge. And just like what you all were talking about, desire prompted activity is all addressed in the previous chapters. And then the next one onwards, it goes into the meditation and um, you know, really seeking and quietening the mind and everything. So this chapter happens to be the bridge between those previous ones and going towards that meditation. So just a quick few things, and Kishore, while you mentioned Tamasik, so I quickly went in and edited this thing. So it's actually very beautiful. And I just referred to some shlokas there with the S numbers. So in the second one, there's action versus no action. And why is action more important, or is quote unquote superior to no action? It's really, we can't just sit there and do nothing. We have to take action. And it's not, although the shloka says that it is superior to renunciation, it's there's a deeper meaning that Swamiji explains in his summary, which means that I think Krishna realizes Arjuna, which is all of us, basically do need, are not at the stage to renounce everything. So you have to go into the action piece. That's basically what it is. And therefore, this is not an option. We have to be here so that we keep progressing ourselves to purify and get rid of those impurities, like what Kishore was talking about. I particularly like this one. He sees who sees. And basically, Krishna says, the Sankhya is equal to the yoga, meaning, doing what you need to do is almost equal, or maybe equal to being a wise one or a jnani. And this is, again, I think he's just reinforcing what he is saying here. He's basically saying, if I were to put it very crudely, you guys don't know what you really need to strive for, that quote unquote, happiness or knowledge of yourselves. But until that time, you need to be doing what needs to be done and take action. I like this analogy just because it also shows that even during that time, people knew that the lotus leaf and the water was not really wetting the lotus leaf. So all these analogies are, I find them to be really beautiful. And there's the other one on quietening the mind. I think, Kishore, you referred to it, the candle in the wind kind of thing. So the sages that realize that are free from sin is this shloka here. And then, of course, he describes the equipoise of the sages, which means they look upon a brahmana, a cow, they don't differentiate between a dog and an outcast. So it also kind of shows at that time all these things existed, but the sages, they are able to see beyond all of these things. Found that very, very insightful. And I think as this thing keeps progressing, Krishna is kind of preparing to go into this meditation stage. So that's why he keeps going deeper and deeper and saying, you need to get equipoise and you need to keep taking the action. But now let's get into why we need to take action, because we need to go from here to here. And the last one is, I think we discussed this quite a bit here. The freedom from desire and anger, equipoise. The only thing I just wanted to add was, I can definitely attest to this. It does lead to fearlessness, and what Swamiji says is quote unquote absolute freedom. That's basically, to me, these two things are basically the same thing. And I think Chitra, what you were talking about, that mental chatter, honestly, if we think about it, this is just a perspective. I don't think the mental chatter really stops, because we are still here, right? That expectation or the desire still exists. Therefore, the chatter cannot, we cannot deem that it has stopped. It has stopped only when you get here. So that chatter is still in this stage or somewhere over here. Therefore, it's not where it's supposed to be. That's basically what I had. And I just, in the interest of time, I'll just stop here.
Awesome. Thanks. And if you can please put back that slide, I have a question for you. And I'm going to put you on the spot there.
I was trying to stop sharing. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So from 1/2021 to 8/2022, the scary as hell seems to have gone deeper. Is that a bad representation or is it reality?
This one?
Yeah, the depth of the scary to hell from the red line to the blue line seems to have gone deeper.
Yeah.
Or marginally lower, I do not know.
No, so that's a great question. Hang on one second. Yeah, so you can see that I zoomed in, right?
Yeah.
To this.
Yeah.
Okay, so it does go deeper because in the initial stages, in my mind, what I was trying to show here is the thinking was all just purely scientific, right? And I really did not realize what we were missing. So basically, in the initial stages, there's a lot of investment that is required. So maybe when we say value, it's the perceived value, right? So, but soon enough, if we keep doing the right thing and kind of combining, this is what I think. If we keep combining our practical everyday knowledge with whatever we are doing in our group and outside of the group, then we should quickly go here. But until that point, we are going to keep questioning ourselves. That's why it gets deeper, Guntax. And sometimes we might be very skeptical, and we keep doing that, right? So at least that's what I was trying to show here.
I love your graph. Guntax, put it back again, if you don't mind.
I'm not going to get away from this thing.
No, this is really wonderful. I mean, this is not different from where I am, because and the question that I'm sort of thinking is that I very much was on that sort of red path to the first red dot, where I don't know, it was more like a feel-good factor, I think. That I'm on this journey, I'm feeling good about it, it's different, it sort of resonated, it had a scientific basis. It just kind of felt like this is the right path you're on, right? And I don't know whether the axis on the left is value or something else.
Yeah, it's value, right? What a perceived value.
It's value, but I'm like, in my head, I don't know whether that's value or not, but I actually just felt, like I said, perceived value, right? I did feel like I was on a very good path, and there was a lot of buoyancy in my sort of thought process. And then the dip, right? And I wonder, what is that dip? And you kind of characterized it nicely as scary as hell. It is scary in a sort of a funny way, because, and why is it scary? I mean, I wonder, why does it go down and not sort of continue on that incremental path that you've laid out? And I don't know the answer, but I certainly feel like very similar to the way you've kind of characterized it.
Yeah, so Ajay, I kind of adopted this thing from what we do for innovation. At least I use this curve all the time for innovation, because when you want to shift your thinking, there is a scary period where there's a lot of investment and energy that goes into it, until you realize that innovation is actually paying off dividends, and the value just exponentially goes up at some point.
Yeah.
I'm just using the same analogy here. So it's the perceived value, like what is happening. In fact, you make a good point. Last time, I think you brought it up, right? Not last week, I missed that, but the one before that, right? That is actually the perfect example. Like what is it that I'm doing? You know, I've been at it for 2 years now. We are post-COVID. It is that scary period. Now it's the scary period.
Yeah, and I can completely sort of relate to it. And part of it is also kind of to the fact that, you know, how do we now bridge the practical and the theory, right? And that, you know, there is a lot of heavy lifting to be done to get onto that sort of exponential path. So yeah, maybe that's kind of part of the reason, but really good chart. If you don't mind, can you just send that through on WhatsApp or
yeah,
wherever?
of course.
I love
yeah,
absolutely. It's really nice. Yeah.
You can put the vertical line, change the title of the vertical line, and tell us what that vertical line means.
I'll say perceived value. That's the
no. That is what you're saying. But I want to learn what is Ajay's perspective on the vertical line.
Yeah, no, let me reflect on that, because I really kind of thought that sort of it kind of reflects my sort of state of mind as well.
Yeah, Vidya, you had a question for Gunts.
1 second. If you had to put this up the third time, I think would have been funny.
I was almost expecting that. I can do it. No problem, Vidya. Go ahead.
Gunts, change the title of the slide is scary as hell.
Yeah. So I had Gunts, I had a question. I first of all apologize. I have not been in the sessions for chapter 5, so I might be asking the question out of context. But the question is this chart or this graph that you're showing is for you know, how you have come through the scriptural learning process, or is it your life process, or it is many lives that you may think you have already had to achieve the goal?
Wow. Okay. So I can tell you what is running through my mind. It wasn't definitely the last one that you mentioned, but now that you mention it, I think that's probably the case. You know, it's a great insight that you are bringing up. Perhaps it is right, based on our current understanding. And the other thing, for the second one you mentioned, it's definitely the combination of the scriptural for me. You know, again, we can argue what do I mean by me and all that, but in general, in this state of mind that I'm in, definitely there is a combination of the scriptural, you know, whatever understanding that I'm at right now. I'm trying to show the progress of that, and I'm trying to reconcile some of the scientific things that are pretty strongly embedded in my mind, at least.
So that's for Gunts' book. Okay, I think he's introducing a concept called spiritual evolutionary empirical sciences in his book, where he combines the spiritual part of it with the scientific part of it, and coming from someone who's like a PhD. Incidentally, Gunts is a PhD, if none of you knew about it. So that's an amazing thing, amazing concept, and the way that he's articulated it, I really loved it. You should read the book. It's a gentle plug for his book.
Yeah, quick point. I saw the y-axis in the chart as spiritual progress, and then yes, there is a point where we feel, oh my God, and then I completely relate to that.
Yeah. Hey, I lost signal. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Yeah, it's definitely, I just feel that, in fact, Swamiji, when I was reading this chapter 5, frankly, I spoke with Guntax yesterday, and then he reminded me what we were going to do today. And so immediately I opened it up and I read the whole thing. And when I was reading it, at least in 2 points, he says, it is scientific. You know, Krishna is being very scientific. I can pick out the specific places where he says that. And then he says, this science, you know, so there is science in it. We just have our own definition of science, right? So it needs to be a different, we just have to broaden it, is my opinion.
Last question for Gunts. Just last one. Otherwise,
dedicate a session for Gunts Light. and we can all ask multiple times for it to go up or keep it there constantly. And we will have Ajay's version of it also very soon. So
exactly.
Yeah. Ajay will share next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd love to. I'm not sure I'll join next time, but yeah, I'll kind of certainly share thoughts.
Okay. So it's 7:40, 10 minutes
Or
past.
just a comment here for
Go ahead,
Raj.
Ashish.
For Raj, it's an exponential curve. For me, it's a sine wave.
Well said.
But it's a sine wave, Ashish, I think for all of us on that curve itself. So it's just noise.
Okay, so you have zoomed in. Okay.
I'm zoomed in.
Now I think you need to talk in my language. This is mathematics. I can't understand. All right. Okay. So I think we should conclude our session today. So here's what I'm going to do in terms of to summarize what we learned today. Right. I'm kind of picking up on the various chapters of Gita so far that we've traversed, and just probably using one key words in each of the things, and summarizing the what we are doing here. So it starts with Vishada, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, which is a torment, a mental torment, and then it goes to Sankhya, the solution for the particular problem, okay, which is the knowledge. And then if you don't understand that knowledge, then it goes to Karma Yoga. And then if you don't understand the Karma Yoga also, then it goes to Jnana Karma Yoga, where it says intellectually you understand what it is, right? And then renounce by intellectually understanding, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Okay. But if you're still not able to do that, then the next chapter is Sannyasa Yoga. The book types it as Sannyasa Yoga. But my Guruji used to say that it's better off if it is said as Jnana, as Karma Sannyasa Yoga, where you let go of the agency of action. Okay. So the way that it progresses, Karma Yoga is you let go of the fruits, and then Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga is you let go of the fruits with the knowledge of who you truly are. And then the next one is, it says that you let go of the agency of action. It's not about the fruits part in Karma Sannyasa Yoga, chapter 5, more focuses on the agency part of it. And that's how I kind of understand. So anyway, so we can pick that thing up in the next session. So with that, let's say our concluding prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhaga Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. All right. So we will meet next weekend to complete the rest of the people. I'm not sure if others are going to join in, but if others are not going to join in, then I think we will probably conclude much earlier in the following week. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.